Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a topic that's usually tangled up in confusion, heavy emotion, and, frankly, a lot of psychological pain. We're talking about gaslighting. But look, we're not going to treat this like some mystical, overwhelming force that just happens to you. No, today we're leaning on a really fascinating, highly systematic analysis from Beatrice Caruso's work, specifically the axis of perception. We're going to completely shift how you see gaslighting, from this confusing emotional trap into what it actually is, a mechanical system. And because it's a system, you know what? It has mechanics. It has moving parts, and most importantly, that means we can literally dismantle it together. So, here's our roadmap for today. We're going to break down the system behind gaslighting, look at exactly why accusing doesn't work, go through 8 specific instruments of recovery, map out a step-by-step process for taking it all back, and finally, we'll talk about the ultimate reversal, your ownership. Think of this as our stabilizing anchor to guide us logically right out of that maze of manipulation.
All right, Section 1, the system behind gaslighting. We really need to start by completely redefining the core problem here, just so we can look at it with some cold, hard clarity.
So the crucial takeaway here is that gaslighting isn't just one bad person doing something to you. It's actually this cruel interlocking loop maintained by 2 people. It's a system designed to completely autonomously hijack your perception. Essentially, the manipulator externalizes their reality, telling you things like that never happened or you're just being way too sensitive, and then slowly you begin to internalize that correction as your own personal self-doubt. What starts off as someone else's totally skewed version of the facts eventually becomes your internal truth. Crazy, right?
Now, this brilliant, albeit totally destructive, system actually relies on 3 specific movements. First, like we just talked about, is that cycle of externalizing and internalizing. But the second step? Wow, this is where it gets truly insidious. It's called the hijacked virtue. Think about it. In a healthy relationship, the willingness to doubt yourself and self-reflect is an absolute virtue. It's how we grow. But gaslighting takes your very best virtue, that healthy capacity for self-reflection and honesty, and literally turns it into an open door that's used against you. Finally, you have intermittent reinforcement. The manipulator basically alternates between warmth and complete denial. This unpredictability creates a powerful trauma bond, which is exactly why the outside world might look at a situation and see a disaster, but inside, you somehow find yourself defending the very person who's undermining you.
To really grasp just how deep this goes, I want you to imagine a neurological metaphor, a fresh track in a meadow. From a neurological standpoint, every single time you give in and tell yourself, well, maybe I did remember it wrong, you are deepening that exact path in your brain. You know the saying, neurons that fire together, wire together? Well, after a while, this entire system becomes completely autonomous. Your brain actually corrects itself, generating self-doubt before the manipulator even opens their mouth to speak. The fight literally moves from the outside world directly into your own mind.
Moving right along to Section 2, why accusing doesn't work. Let's look at how a perfectly natural human reaction can actually trigger the trap of accusation. Okay, so here is a deeply counterintuitive truth. You might think that labeling the behavior, like giving the other person a clinical diagnosis and calling them a narcissist, is super empowering. But Caruso points out something fascinating. Calling them a narcissist actually keeps you trapped in the system. Why? Because it keeps you in a fight over whose reality is true. And remember, that is a fight the manipulator controls way better than you do. You absolutely do not need to diagnose someone else in order to take yourself back.
Instead of fighting over the content of a specific incident, like desperately trying to prove you were right about what happened last Tuesday, you've got to step into what Caruso calls the axis. The axis is this place of pure observation. See, gaslighting works on the content of what you see, but it absolutely cannot hijack the fact that you are seeing. By moving to the axis, you stop asking, wait, was I right? And you simply observe, I notice that my doubt is being systematically produced right now. You aren't standing on that rutted track in the meadow anymore. You're standing way above it, just looking down at it.
All right, Section 3, 8 instruments of recovery. Now that we understand the mechanics of the problem, it's time to pivot to empowerment and look at our actual solutions.
Caruso provides us with an absolute arsenal here. 8 specific instruments of recovery, and each one is designed to attack the gaslighting system on a totally different front. We've got facts, testing your reality with an outsider, reclaiming your language, and managing the door of your self-doubt. Then we have stepping into the axis, listening to your body signals, rebuilding your network to break that awful isolation, and finally, laying the new track. Together, these form one unified movement back to ownership. Let's zoom in on a couple of the most powerful ones. The very first instrument is all about establishing facts. This means keeping a purely factual logbook, ideally written within an hour of an event happening. You just write down the date, what happened, and literal quotes. No emotional interpretations, just the cold data. Why do this? Because paper has absolutely no doubt. When you're later told, oh, that never happened, you aren't pitting your shaky, stressed memory against their absolute certainty. You have a tangible external anchor safely stored right outside the manipulator's reach.
And this brings us to a brilliant concept called the door. Remember earlier when we talked about self-reflection being your virtue, your open door? Well, you don't need to eliminate self-doubt completely. Becoming this hard, closed-off person would honestly be a secondary tragedy. You just need to give your doubt a scheduled weekly appointment. It only opens on your terms. So if doubt creeps in on a Tuesday, you write it down and park it until your scheduled reflection time on Friday. Because a door that has an owner is no longer an open gateway for manipulation.
Moving to Section 4, taking it back step by step. Having the tools isn't quite enough. The sequence is absolutely critical. Let's look at how we rewire the brain.
Caruso outlines a 9-step process, and you really must follow this chronologically. Phase 1 is all about stabilizing yourself. Phase 2 is about conquering the system and learning to observe it from the outside. And then Phase 3 is where you start building anew. You literally cannot conquer your perception without stabilizing it first. If you try to skip steps, you're just going to slip right back into that old neurological track in the meadow we talked about earlier.
Now, step 1 is brutal, but it's actually incredibly simple. You have to completely refuse to participate in any live debate about the validity of your perception. Every single round you argue just deepens that mental track. So you have to practice one calm sentence, something like, I'm not going to discuss this right now. No defending, no proving yourself. Your reality does not need a defense lawyer. You just state your observation and immediately disengage from the mechanism of the fight.
Let's fast forward a bit to step 9, the final step. This is where we use neuroplasticity to our advantage. To overwrite that old track of, I must be wrong, we have to actively and consciously lay a new one. This means taking just 3 minutes every single evening to write down 3 uncorrected observations from your day. Something like, today I saw this and I'm letting it stand. You do this for a minimum of 90 days to pave a brand new mental route. You are quite literally redesigning your brain's default response.
Which brings us to Section 5, the reversal and your ownership. Let's see how all this structure builds toward total ownership of your own life.
The ultimate realization of this explainer, and of Caruso's entire system, is that gaslighting runs on one primary fuel source: your unconscious cooperation. It totally relies on you not seeing the mechanics. Because as the saying goes, what is carried unconsciously is passed on unchanged. But everything we've unpacked today, it's all designed to make those unconscious gears suddenly very, very visible to you.
This is honestly my absolute favorite takeaway from all of this. Just by consciously seeing the pattern from the axis, you've already created the very first interruption of the system. Remember, you haven't done anything wrong. Your door of honesty was open because honesty is a beautiful thing. Your task right now isn't to build some impenetrable fortress. It's simply to become the owner, the person who decides exactly when that door opens and who is actually allowed to step through it.
So, I'm going to leave you with this final empowering thought. From the access, that place of pure, untouchable observation, you are no longer just wandering blindly in that meadow track. You are standing above it, looking down at it. This isn't the end of the story. It's actually the precise moment where you stop defending what you saw in the past and you step into pure observation to design exactly who you are going to become next. So will you design your own path? Thanks for exploring this vital topic with me today. Keep observing and take care.